Imagine waking up tomorrow with the mind of a billionaire. Not one of those who inherited their fortune, but one who built every penny with sweat, clear thinking, and disciplined action. Now go further. Imagine that this mind is that of Henry Ford, a man who transformed not only industry, but the way the world works, lives, and prospers. What if I told you that you could access this kind of thinking, not with tricks, not with luck, but with a radical and deliberate change in mindset? Yes, I am speaking directly to you, because what I'm going to show you here is a raw, real, and practical immersion into the most powerful and productive billionaire mindset in history. And if you have the courage to apply it, you'll stop surviving and finally start building an empire, even if it's a one-person empire. But it starts now. So get ready. Because this isn't a motivational lecture. It's a call to action. An industrial plan for personal reconstruction. And before we get into the details, I challenge you to do one thing. Subscribe to the channel. Not out of vanity or for numbers, but because those who commit to transformation need to be surrounded by continuous instruction. And this is just the beginning. Look, I wasn't born a billionaire. I didn't have a manual. What I had was an obsession. An obsession with understanding how things worked, and then how to make them work better. It started with engines, gears, wheels. But over time, I realized that the most complex and powerful engine was the human mind. And that most people live as if their own mind were a broken down cart, slow, disorganized, noisy, carrying dead weight. I decided to build a fail-safe internal engine, a mental model where there is no room for eternal doubts or uncontrolled emotions. Do you want to understand the mind of a billionaire? Then start by understanding that wealth is not what is left after work. It is what is generated as a result of working the right way. In practice, my mind operated like an assembly line. Every idea needed a structure. Every decision needed criteria. Every action needed a reason. Nothing was left to chance. There was no room for unnecessary improvisation. And if you look at your own life right now, you'll see that most of your days are decided by chance, distractions, and impulses. But a billionaire mind doesn't move on impulse. It moves by system. And here's the first principle you need to internalize. Organized thinking generates constant wealth. You can have the best idea in the world, the greatest talent, the purest intention. But if you don't organize your mind like a productive decision-making factory, you will always be a mental manual laborer, exhausted, frustrated, and poor. I've seen it hundreds of times. I've seen men smarter than me sink because of a lack of clarity, a lack of method, a lack of focus. Meanwhile, I followed a process. Simplify, eliminate waste, standardize execution. First in the workshop, then in the office, and finally in my own way of thinking. It's no coincidence that I built a fortune by standardizing automobiles. But what few people understood is that I first standardized my way of thinking. I cleared my mind of all noise, everything that didn't lead to production. Do you want to know how to think like a billionaire? Eliminate everything that doesn't build. If it doesn't generate results, it doesn't enter the system. If it doesn't produce progress, it doesn't consume energy. That's the engineering of the rich mindset. And it starts with a decision to stop thinking like an emotional slave and start acting like an engineer of your own life. A billionaire mindset isn't about brilliant ideas. It's about ideas that work. And to work, an idea needs to be put into practice. Many people called me crazy for betting that anyone could own a car. But I didn't care about opinions. I cared about the process. While others argued about whether it was possible, I was already designing the production line. And when I put it into practice, I didn't just create cars. I created jobs. I created a new middle class. I created a new model of civilization. That's not an exaggeration. That's the power of a mind that acts like an industry dot. So if you want extraordinary results, stop looking for magic formulas and start designing your own processes. Turn your routine into a system. Turn your goals into deadlines. Turn your emotions into fuel. And never, ever allow your mind to function as a repository for worries. It must function as a factory for solutions. Now listen carefully. A billionaire mind is a mind with purpose, not a romantic, abstract, dreamy purpose, but a purpose of production, transformation, impact. While you wake up thinking about escaping pain, I wake up thinking about eliminating flaws. Do you see the difference? One thinks like a victim, the other like an engineer, and that changes everything. When you view life as a machine that can be improved, you are no longer a hostage. You become a builder. And here's a second principle of my mindset. Everything can be improved, always, and improvement starts with you. You are the centerpiece of your life. And if that piece is unstable, unmotivated, or contaminated by emotional garbage, the whole system crashes. That's why I say there is no growth without discipline. There is no progress without routine. There is no success without method. And if that sounds harsh, it's because you're still seeking comfort. But billionaires don't seek comfort. They seek results. The truth is that most people don't want freedom. They want relief. They want a vacation from the chaos they've created for themselves. And then they call it life. But true freedom only exists when you master the process. When you don't depend on motivation. When you don't surrender to every crisis. When you function like a system. That's why I created the concept of automation. Not just in machines, but in decisions. You wake up, and you already know what to do. You fail, and you already know how to fix it. You think, and you already have a criterion. That's not rigidity. That's efficiency. And efficiency is the third principle of the billionaire mind. Wealth is not measured by how hard you work. It is measured by how much value you generate with the least amount of effort possible. Don't confuse this with laziness. Laziness is the addiction of the mind that doesn't want to think. Efficiency is the habit of the mind that thinks before it acts. And when you apply this to your life, everything changes. You stop chasing money, and you start attracting money as a result of how you function. Do you want to be a billionaire? Then stop thinking about being a billionaire. Start thinking about how to eliminate every waste in your life. Start thinking about how to turn your every action into a cog in the wheel of results. Start acting as if your life is an industry under construction. Because that's exactly what it is. If you understand what I've said so far, you've already taken the first step. You've stopped acting like a victim and started thinking like an engineer of your own life. But that's not enough. Because a production line without leadership is nothing more than a succession of disconnected tasks. And here we come to the fourth principle of the billionaire mind. Absolute internal command. You can work as hard as you want. Study, invest, try. But if your mind doesn't have a clear command system, you will be ruled by circumstances. And that's exactly what I avoided from the beginning. While everyone else was waiting for conditions to improve, I became the condition. If raw materials were delayed, I found a way to speed up the process. If the economy stalled, I cut costs and increased production. I never waited for things to be perfect before taking action. I made things perfect while taking action. And that is the greatest power of a billionaire mind. It doesn't need the world to change to work. It changes the world through its functioning. What about you? What are you waiting for? The right motivation? The ideal moment? Total security? Let me tell you something very clearly. It doesn't exist. And the longer you wait, the more your mind rusts, the more your energy dissipates, the more your life slips through the cracks of fear. Take charge. Set schedules, routines, processes. Create a system where your actions don't depend on your mood, where your productivity doesn't fluctuate with time or the opinions of others. The billionaire mind is an autonomous, disciplined, unshakable mind. Do you think I've never been afraid? I have. But I didn't let fear take the wheel. Fear may warn me that there's danger ahead, but I'm the one driving. And you need to do the same. Feel the fear, but produce anyway. Have doubts, but deliver anyway. Be criticized, but build anyway. Because the world doesn't reward the hesitant. It follows those who lead. And if you don't lead yourself, someone else will do it for you. And not always in your best interest. Now, I'll tell you a secret. What built my empire wasn't intelligence. It was the disciplined repetition of small, efficient patterns. While others looked for shortcuts, I perfected the basics. While others tried to look smart, I simplified until any ordinary man could operate a complex machine. And that goes for your mind too. The billionaire mind doesn't have to be genius. It has to be predictable, adjustable, replicable. Because what makes money isn't chance. It's pattern. And pattern is built with discipline and continuous correction. When I established the assembly line, People said it was inhumane, that it turned men into parts. I saw it differently. I saw that by standardizing tasks, we freed the human brain to think about improvements, innovation, new ways of living. Work ceased to be unpredictable torture and became a path to steady progress. And that's what you need to do with your life. Stop living on the fly and start building a system where every action has a reason. Every step has a metric. Every result feeds the next. That's industrial thinking applied to life. And make no mistake, this works for anyone. It doesn't matter your age, your background, or your history. The billionaire mind isn't born, it's built. I myself was just a farm boy curious about gears. I had no name, no fortune, no influence. I had only one obsession: to figure out how to do things better. And that obsession led me to build one of the largest companies on the planet. You don't need to have everything right now. You just need to start thinking like someone who builds everything with what they have. That's what transforms an ordinary mind into a billionaire's mind. The refusal to accept mediocrity as destiny. But understand, it's not enough to want. You have to pay the price of repetition, the price of sacrifice, the price of constant correction. Are you willing? Because here's another principle of my mind. Nothing worthwhile is easy, and anything that's too easy is hardly worth doing. I'd rather lose nights adjusting a gear than lose years blaming fate. And that's exactly the difference between a builder and a dreamer. The builder works in the dark until the machine starts. The dreamer waits for the light to come on to begin. While many think about retirement, I thought about expansion. Because I understood early on that true rest comes from mastery. Not from stopping work, but from making work work for you. That's why I standardized. That's why I automated. That's why I trained leaders instead of just bosses. Because $1 billion mind doesn't just want results. It wants results that sustain themselves without your constant presence. It wants freedom. But true freedom, the kind that comes from the flawless functioning of a system built with excellence. And maybe now, you're wondering, where do I start? And I'll tell you, start where I started, from the inside. Organize your mind like a workshop. Throw away the broken parts, beliefs that limit you, habits that sabotage you, excuses that paralyze you. Lubricate your thinking with clarity. Reinforce your structure with purpose. Install discipline as your main engine. And above all, set goals as your direction. Because without direction, any effort is wasted. Now listen to this carefully. The billionaire mind sees everything as a process. There are no failures, there are adjustments. There are no crises, there are tests. There is no luck, there is preparation. And when you prepare every day like a well-calibrated machine, success is no longer a matter of chance. It becomes inevitable. That is the power of a structured mind. Now, before we continue, stop for 5 seconds and answer mentally. Am I the engineer of my life or an employee of chance? Think carefully, because that answer defines what you will reap in the coming years. And if you're here so far, it's because you want more than ready-made answers. You want tools. So I propose a simple but powerful challenge, right here in the alley. Comments right now. The phrase, I am building my mind like a production line. It's not about algorithms. It's not about engagement. It's about commitment. Those who write, activate. Those who declare, take a stand. Those who take a stand, execute. And the game changes from there. Let's continue. So far, we've talked about internal structure, systematic thinking, and discipline as a foundation. But I want to show you another fundamental pillar of my billionaire mindset, productive value. What does that mean? It means that every action, every idea, every conversation must have a constructive purpose. It's not about being cold or robotic. It's about respecting your own time as a precious resource. Billionaires don't think about price. They think about value. They don't ask, how much does it cost? They ask, what does it generate? And that's a radical change in the way we live. If you spend your day consuming content that doesn't build you up, hanging out with people who don't lift you up, wasting energy on distractions that don't feed you, then don't complain about poverty, fatigue, or stagnation. You are feeding the wrong system. What you put in determines what you will produce. And I, Henry Ford, have always been radical in this. My mind only fed on ideas that helped me build. I filtered everything. A newspaper? Only if it brought solutions. A conversation? Only if it made me think better. A mistake? Only if I could turn it into a method. Productive value is when even failure becomes a tool, when even delays become adjustments, when even pain becomes energy. There is no waste in a billionaire's mind. Everything is raw material for more results. So if you want to operate at this frequency, start filtering what you consume today. Your feed, your circle, your habits. Every stimulus is a piece that enters your mind's production line. If the piece is bad, the final product will be unstable. But if the piece is good, your results will be increasingly solid, more predictable, more profitable. And that brings me to another crucial point: emotional control. Have you ever seen a factory that stops every time a piece doesn't fit? No. It stops, adjusts, resumes. And the process continues. Your life needs to work like that. But most people freeze at the first sign of discomfort. One negative comment, and they stop everything. One financial problem, and they abandon the project. One criticism, and they start to doubt themselves. That's not freedom. That's emotional slavery. And there's no room for that in a billionaire's mind. I never allowed my feelings to make decisions, because feelings are fleeting. But decisions shape the future. When I realized I was under stress, I took a step back. I observed, I reorganized, and then I acted. This is not coldness, it is operational maturity. You need to treat your emotions as indicators, not as drivers. A billionaire isn't someone who doesn't feel. It's someone who feels and still sticks to the plan. You see, I created an industrial revolution. But first, I had to create an internal revolution. From an insecure country boy to a leader with a global vision. And that transformation was only possible because I understood a truth that few accept. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to organize your life. No one will give you the perfect plan. You are the factory. You are the engineer. You are the worker. And you are the customer. Your whole life is inside this system. So stop waiting for permission and start producing your own path. Now, pay attention. Because if you really apply what you are hearing here, your reality will start to move fast. Your results will change. Your clarity will increase. Your energy will multiply. But all of this will only last if you do one thing. Keep the pace. What kills great ideas is not a lack of talent. It's a break in the rhythm. I've seen it hundreds of times. Brilliant people who started out with everything ... and then disappeared. Why? Because they relied on excitement. But excitement passes. The system remains. That's why in my factory, the rule was clear. Daily production with quality standards. It wasn't about quantity. It was about consistency. And your life needs to follow that same logic. What are you producing today? What are you delivering to the world? Your content, your service, your presence, all of it has to have a signature. And that signature should say, here there is clarity. Here there is commitment. Here is consistency. That's how you build a legacy. And if you want to know how to turn that into real financial wealth, listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Money is a consequence. Don't chase after it. Chase after becoming someone who functions like a value machine. People like that never get poor. Because wherever they are, they generate results. And where there are results, there will always be rewards. Do you want to know why I built an empire that has survived to this day? It wasn't just because of the machines. It was because of the people. And above all, because of the way I dealt with them. Here's a principle that few understand. Leadership is not control. It's a system. And the true leader is not the one who gives orders, but the one who builds an environment where everyone knows what to do, why to do it, and how to do it better every day. That was the secret that transformed the Ford Motor Company from a noisy workshop into a global force. And I'll tell you this loud and clear. If you want to build something lasting, you need to stop being the center of your business, your home, your system. You need to build a model that works without you. This is called automation. And no, I'm not just talking about robots or software. I'm talking about automating decisions, standardizing processes, of creating a structure that keeps turning even when you sleep. That is true freedom. And it only exists for those who think like engineers of their own reality. Look at what I did. I created a process where any worker could assemble a car without being a genius. That didn't demean anyone. It elevated everyone. Because it freed men from unpredictability, chaos, and irrational pressure. When you standardize a process, you take away the burden of memory, improvisation, and anxiety. And that same principle applies to your life. If every morning you have to decide what you're going to do, how you're going to act, what you're going to prioritize, then you're wasting energy that should be focused on producing. Automate. Routine is freedom in disguise. But be careful. Automation is not rigidity. It is operational intelligence. It is freeing your brain to think about what really matters, not solving the same problem every single day. I used to say, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably why so few of us do it. And it's still true. Most people shy away from mental effort. But those who master thinking master reality. And if you want to be a billionaire, in money, impact, or legacy, you need to become a practical thinker, a serial problem solver, a methodical executor, and that's where leadership comes in. I never wanted to be the boss. I wanted to be the leader of the process, the efficiency coach, the stimulator of continuous improvement. And that was only possible because I didn't want to be admired. I wanted to be functional. You don't need charisma to lead. You need consistency. You need to show with your actions that what you say turns into results. A true leader doesn't shout. He works. And his work inspires others to work better too. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to be the benchmark? Because at some point, if you apply what you are hearing here, people will start looking to you for direction. And you need to be prepared. What does that mean? It means that your life has to be an example of productive efficiency. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be reliable. And that only happens when you stop acting according to your mood and start acting according to a plan. Now pay attention. The real billionaire, the one who leaves a legacy, is the one who transforms the environment around them. It's not just about having a lot. It's about building a lot. It's about generating prosperity in a chain reaction. And I did that by raising wages, creating jobs, stimulating the growth of working-class families. Because I understood that a healthy system only thrives when all its elements also thrive. It's the opposite of what the world says. The billionaire mindset is not selfish. It is productive. And all true production benefits many, not just one dot. So when you grow up, and you will if you stay on this path, remember this. Lift others up. Build processes that improve people's lives. Teach what you've learned. Automate to give freedom, not control. Set standards that elevate, not hold back. That is the power of a leader engineer. They don't govern, they structure. And their influence grows in proportion to the clarity of their functioning dot. And when you start to function well, money inevitably follows. But understand, this money is not the prize. It is the reflection. It is the consequence of a well-structured system. I never worked for luxury. I worked for functionality. And because of that, I created one of the world's greatest fortunes. Without ever giving up simplicity. My home was modest. My office was clean. My habits were basic. Because excess complicates things. And complications are expensive in time, focus, and results. Simplicity is the key to every billionaire's mind. If something is too difficult, it's because the process is wrong. And if it's wrong, change it. Don't wait for magic to make it better. The magic is in the adjustment. Every day, a little more clarity, a little more efficiency, a little more delegation, a little less mess, a little less emotion. That's how you build an empire, brick by brick, piece by piece, until one day you look around and realize you've built a machine that works, that delivers, that sustains, that transforms, and that no longer depends on you. That is true freedom. And it starts now with the decisions you make in the next 24 hours. Adjust your routine. Eliminate noise. Establish a process. Create a system and make it work. Because the billionaire mind is not a promise. It is a structure. And structure is built with action. So far, you have understood that true wealth does not come from luck, inheritance, or genius. It comes from a system, from disciplined repetition, from a mind trained to think like a growing industry. But there is one thing that separates those who prosper from those who disappear: an obsession with continuous improvement. This is where many stop. They think they have arrived. They relax. They settle into their own success. And little by little, they begin to regress. But a billionaire mind knows, either you improve or you die. I never accepted good enough. Every Ford model was an attempt to surpass the previous one, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the process. Because anything that isn't being improved is being threatened. If you want lasting results, you need to operate within the logic of excellence. And excellence is not a place. It is a movement. It is a daily decision to adjust, calibrate, refine, improve. And it starts with the little things. Do you keep your environment clean? Your tools organized? Your appointments up to date? Your sleep regulated? Your diet aligned with your energy? All of this is part of your productive machine. And when one component fails, the entire system suffers. There is no such thing as fragmented success. The billionaire mind thinks about the whole, and it adjusts each piece with the same care, because it knows that greatness is not in the spectacle. It is in the flawless functioning of the invisible. But mind you, this obsession with improvement cannot become a burden. It needs to be fueled by purpose. And here is another difference in my mind. Everything I did had a very clear why. I didn't just want to sell cars. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to democratize transportation. I wanted to give workers the same access that the rich had. I wanted to level the playing field with efficiency. And that purpose gave me energy when I was tired, direction when the path seemed uncertain, clarity when the noise of the world tried to distract me. Do you have that purpose? Not a nice slogan, but a concrete motivation that makes you get out of bed every day with conviction? Because the billionaire mind doesn't operate solely for profit. It operates for impact. And impact only happens when your work transcends you. I knew I was going to die one day, but I wanted to leave something behind that would continue to work even after my death. And that's what I did. Because my focus was never just on the present. It was always on what the present could generate for the future. And if you're listening to me here today, it's because that future has arrived. You are reaping what I have sown. And now it's your turn to sow. And how do you sow? With vision, with structure, with solid values. Don't trade your principles for temporary conveniences. The world will offer you shortcuts, easy ways out, faster paths. But nothing solid is born of haste. It took me years to fine-tune every detail of production. I tested. I failed. I started over. But I didn't give up on the process. And that's why my name has become synonymous with productivity. Do you want your name to carry weight? Do you want to be remembered? Then build something that works. Something that generates value, even when you're no longer around. That's the true legacy of a billionaire mind. It's not the money you leave behind. It's the system you put in place. It's the thinking you inspire. It's the structure you create for others to thrive. And here's some straight advice. Don't compare yourself to others. They are not your benchmark. You don't know their process. You don't know what they did, what they didn't do, what they inherited, or what they hid. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and improve 1 millimeter a day, 1 adjustment a week, 1 victory a month. Because over time, these advances add up. And suddenly, what was impossible becomes inevitable. That's how the billionaire mind operates. Quietly, methodically, with vision. I want you to understand this viscerally. The world does not belong to the fastest. It belongs to the most consistent. It does not belong to the brightest. It belongs to the most disciplined. It does not belong to the most connected. It belongs to the most prepared. And that preparation does not happen at parties or in motivational videos. It happens in the silence of execution, behind the scenes of routine, in the invisible effort of continuous improvement. So if you're tired, keep going. If you're frustrated, adjust. If you're unsure, simplify. But don't stop, because a mind that stops rusts. And you didn't come this far to become just another spectator. You came to lead, to execute, to transform. And that mission begins within you. Review your processes, improve your environment, redesign your habits, reinforce your discipline, align your mind like a precision machine, And when the world tries to distract you, smile. Because you know you are building something that no one can take away. Not time, not crisis, not failure. Because when the mind works like an industry, no storm can bring the system down. We have reached the end of this journey, but if you understand the spirit of what has been said so far, you know that this is not the end. It is the beginning. Because now you have before you not just information, but a new mental model. A plan for internal reconstruction based on productive thinking, systematic execution, and applied purpose. This is not theory. This is the factory floor of life. It is sweat transformed into method. It is clarity transformed into capital. It is a disciplined mind transformed into freedom. And now I'm going to talk to you directly. You who have a history of frustration. You blame yourself for starting late. You carry debts, insecurities, fears, traumas. Listen carefully. Your mind is intact. It may be disorganized, confused, discredited, but it is intact. And like any system, it can be rebuilt. You don't need a new past. You need a new plan. And that plan is in your hands. Right now. Stop repeating to yourself that it's hard, that it's too late, that it's impossible. That's scarcity programming. That's the echo of a society that wants to keep you small, submissive, controlled. But you weren't made for that. You were made to create, to produce, to lead. And it doesn't matter where you are right now. Building starts with the first gear, with the first clear decision, with the first movement repeated consistently. I didn't come here to motivate you. I came to wake you up. Because the world doesn't need more motivated people. It needs more structured people, more functional people, more people who operate with excellence, even when no one is watching. More invisible leaders who are laying the groundwork for their children, grandchildren, friends, and even strangers to thrive. You can be that person. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Your bank balance, your degree, your last name. None of that builds an empire. What builds it is what you do when no one is applauding you, when no one believes in you, when everything seems small, repetitive, invisible. It was there, in that silence, that I built my empire. And that's where you're going to build yours. So go. Design your day like a production line. Execute like an engineer. Adjust like a mechanic. Think like a strategist. And live like a leader. Because your life, from now on, is your company. Your body is your factory. Your mind is your command center. And your results are the products of that operation. Now, take a deep breath and understand what this means. You have in your hands the greatest tool for transformation ever created, your mind. And if you decide to operate this machine with purpose, efficiency, and a long-term vision, no crisis will bring you down. No bankruptcy will define you. No mistake will paralyze you. You will function. You will grow. And you will leave a legacy. And that legacy starts now. Because now it's your turn to turn ideas into productive machines. Sign up and share this video with anyone who wants to build a solid legacy. Because the world needs more minds like yours, functioning at the highest level.